and welcome to Quilt Moxy, the podcast, where Quilt Moxy meets Craftsy.com, an online community dedicated to providing the best education and resources for crafters. Join me, Ariana, your host, and come along on my video journey where I participate in the Craftsy online classes and community. Meet up with us online at quiltmoxy.com or at your favorite hangout, Craftsy, Ravelry, Facebook, Twitter. Check the credits at the end of the show for more. You can also subscribe to our mailing list to get your next and every episode with show notes delivered directly to your email as soon as the episode is available. It's as simple as dropping your email address and checking Receive Podcast by email. Welcome back to Quilt Moxy, the podcast. I'm your host, Ariana. And this is episode 6, all about socks. Today's segments include In the Gallery, Knit Toe-Up Socks with Donna Druchunas from Craftsy, and I've sprinkled a couple of demos throughout. Let's get started. In the gallery. Joining me is a special guest. I'd like to introduce you to Angie. And just to give you a little bit of background, it happened all 2 years ago when I went with my mom on our once-in-a-lifetime trip to Germany to visit some relatives and to get to know her a bit better. So we've come full circle, and Angie is one of the relatives that I had never met, and she has now visited us from Germany, and she stayed with us this summer in Canada. It's been a bit of a bittersweet ending because we only have a couple of days left before she has to go back to Germany. So in the gallery, we have Angie, who's going to be talking about the first quilt that she has ever made. And here she is.
Dankeschön. Ja, hier in Kanada erstmal, um ein paar Worte zu sagen. Es war eine richtig schöne Zeit. Ich habe viele neue Leute kennengelernt, neue Erfahrungen gemacht. Und eine Erfahrung davon war eben Patchworking, was Ariane macht. Und sie hat mit mir zusammen ein Kissen gemacht. Und das war eine komplett neue Erfahrung, weil ich davor nie irgendwas mit Patchwork oder Nähen oder sonst irgendwas zu tun hatte. Und das ist das Resultat. Wir haben uns gedacht, dass wir ein bisschen was auf Modern Quilting machen, so, weil ich das Moderne viel lieber mag als das Traditionelle. Und Hauptbestandteil von einem Kissen ist eben das Peace-Zeichen, weil ich mag das wirklich und in Deutschland ist das immer mehr in Mode. Es kommt auch wieder viel mehr auf Klamotten oder sonst irgendwas. Und deswegen wollte ich das gern drin haben. Also das ist hier der Hauptbestandteil. Dann natürlich von dem Modern Patchwork sind diese Linien hier. Und das Schwierige für mich war, dass ich eine Art Perfektionistin bin. Deswegen musste alles schön gerade sein und zueinander passen. Das war eine ziemliche Herausforderung für uns. Aber ich habe mit dem Kissen halt auch gelernt, dass nicht alles komplett perfekt sein muss, sondern dass man eben sich halt auch arrangieren muss. So, was ich wirklich mag, sind diese Punkte hier. Und normalerweise hätte ich nie Blumen zusammen mit Punkten gemacht. Und dann noch dazu hier diese Kästchen. Aber dann haben wir es einfach ausprobiert. Ariane hat gemeint, lass es uns einfach probieren und dann sehen wir, ob du es magst. Und jetzt, am Ende muss ich wirklich sagen, ich mag es wirklich sehr. Und es war eine komplett neue Erfahrung und ich bin froh, die gemacht zu haben.
So I think Angie did an awesome job. In fact, I was kind of shocked that I did get a chance to show her a little bit of quilting. It was, if you'll recall from my first podcast, this podcast is as a result of our trip to Germany where I learned how to knit socks. And so now we've come full circle and I've showed Angie how to quilt and patchwork in German. And I'm not sure if she's ever going to take it up again, but I thought it was kind of a cool thing that we've come full circle like that. So thank you so much, Angie, for having the courage to come to Canada. And I know my children are going to be enriched for having her here, and it's been an amazing experience. Have a safe trip back to Germany.
Dankeschön.
Auf Wiedersehen.
It's
been now less than a week since we drove to the airport. and there was a very heart-wrenching separation. Lots of tears were shed, and we watched Angie go through customs, and that was the last time that we got to see her here in Canada. So yeah, we miss her. We miss her a lot. Yep. Okay, so let's get into our toe-up socks with Donna Druchunas on Craftsy. Now, I signed up for this class after I learned how to knit socks on my own with all the books, and my first pair of socks ever that I knit are here on my gallery background. These are the socks that Aunt Waltraud showed me how to knit while I was in Berlin for 1 week. And what you're going to notice, or maybe you can't see it from there, but I did put a crochet trim on the cuff of the cuff down socks that I learned how to knit on DPNs with Waltraud. And little did I know that it was going to lead to just more socks that I ended up knitting. So here are some of them that I put up on the gallery board. And the ones that I want to showcase today are the ones that I learned to do toe up with Donna Druchunas on Craftsy. I took the toe up class because I could not figure out how to create a toe up with gusset sock. So the actual sock, as per the recipe by Donna Druchunas, was used to create the Fruit Loop sock by Christy Geraci on Ravelry. It's a free sock pattern. It's called Fruit Loop, but I sort of modified it, and I'm going to show you what it looks like just so that you can see what the actual toe up with gusset sock looks like that I learned from Donna Druchunas. I really like the way she explained how to calculate for the gusset when you're knitting toe up. So the Fruit Loop sock I modified. The part that I liked was the actual Fruit Loop part, so that's what I kept. And everything else pretty much was changed. Let's see if the camera can focus on the Fruit Loop. So you can see the Fruit Loop pattern. Let's start with the toe up. So the toe up, my favorite toe up, is Donna's moccasin toe up. And here it is. And I do everything reinforced. So it's a slip and knit one stitch. So here's the moccasin. And then the sole is also reinforced. I'm not sure if the camera can focus on this. Is it going to focus? I'm going to see. Let's see if we can go like this. Is that better? Anyway, so everything is sort of reinforced. And I did also her heel turn followed by a reinforced heel on the back. And you can see the gusset shaping here as per Donna's formula. The sock fits wonderfully. And my favorite sort of slip stitch cuff, which is a 3 by, is it a 3 by 1? Yeah, it's a 3 by 1 rib with a slip stitch. And I finished it off with a crochet picot edge. So that was the toe up. Now the other sock that I wanted to showcase today is a pattern by Erin Case of the, I loved her Anatomy of Knitting podcast as well. And it's called Cabley Goodness. And somehow something happened and I ended up deviating from the pattern just slightly. So again, I'm starting with the moccasin toe with a reinforced bottom. And the difference is instead of doing the increasing for the gusset, it's more like, how would I explain that? It's it's as if you're starting on the toe up, but it's like you're starting from the cuff going down. So it's like a cuff down, and then you're creating a gusset, is how I would explain it. So here's the deviation. I split the cable to sort of highlight the gusset. And again, reinforced sole and heel. And on the heel, I added a couple of extra short rows to lengthen the heel. And I'm going to go up. And here's my new 3x3 rib with the knit, slip one, knit rib. And it's also finished with a picot crochet edge. These socks fit my mom perfectly. And they're now full of grass stains because when I photographed the pictures for Craftsy, I had them modeled outside in the grass. So my mom has no problems with grass stains. She's going to deal with those grass stains when she gets her socks. And my last pair of socks that I wanted to show you are also Donna Druchunas toe up gusset socks. Now, these are for my hubby, and I'm going to call them my new vanilla sock toe up. So the toe up formula again is the moccasin toe, reinforced sole, and this time I've got a combination, sort of a hybrid heel, which is a short row heel followed by a gusset heel, just to give you even extra room around the heel area. And the thing that I'm calling it a vanilla sock, it has a bit of texture on the top part of the instep, and that pattern is basically a self-striping sock yarn. And whenever I felt like it, I put either 1, 3, or 5 purl stitches randomly throughout. So it gives a bit of texture around the sock. And when I do knit socks, I do knit them 2 at a time. So here's what I wanted to show you, what they look like. And I'm also going to demonstrate with these socks. There's only the cast off that's missing for these socks for them to be finished. And I'm going to be using Jenny's extra stretchy cast off using a crochet hook. So here's what the socks look like when I'm knitting them. And you're going to see that one of the socks, you're going to see the heel pointing to you, and the other sock is with the foot pointing to you. And this is how I would actually knit them. Every single pair of socks that I've done, with the exception, the reason I'm bringing this up actually is because of this one pair of socks, which are also toe up with the moccasin toe, etc. And it has an afterthought heel that I learned from Donna as well. These socks, there are 2 of them, and you would think that the reason I'm doing 2 socks at the same time is because I might have second sock syndrome or whatever it is. But that wasn't the case, and I noticed that when I was watching all the podcasts, everybody's doing 1 sock at a time, so I decided I was going to do these socks 1 at a time. And what happened was, I did my first sock, no problem, and then I did my second sock, and something happened, and I had to undo it and do a third sock. So this pair of socks is actually 3 socks that I had to knit in order to get 2. So I realized that for me it was a lot easier for me to do 2 socks at the same time, not because of the second sock syndrome or whatever it was, but somehow it just worked better for me. And just because I'm doing 2 socks at the same time, let me just remind you about my Shetland socks. That 2 socks, these were also done 2 socks at the same time. They were cuffed down with a reinforced heel, with a gusset, and they were the monkey socks by Cookier and a crochet edging. Now you may not recognize them from my other podcast because I dyed them a different color. If you're going to recall that one of them, which is this one, was felted going through my washing machine, and the other one isn't. So I still have two socks, two different sizes. So this is the non-felted one, and then I have a smaller version, which I guess you'll see better if I put one on top of the other, that is felted. So what I wanted to find out, since I did these two at the same time, but of course now I have one sock of each, I figured let's see if I can food dye these in my microwave. And let me show you the original yarn. The original yarn from my mom's deep, very deep vintage stash. Here it is, Shetland wool socks. I had two colors that I was using for these socks, and they were white and blue. And when I added the food dye, you're going to notice that you cannot see that this part of the sock was white and the foot part of the sock was light blue. It just dyed beautifully. And so you're going to ask me, how did you dye it? Well, I'm using mason jars, and I'm using my food dye that you get from the supermarket, and it's somewhere between a reheat and a popcorn setting, and I get these colors. By the way, this sock here is from Mom's very deep vintage stash as well, and they were food color dyed as well, and I'm going to show you which yarn it was. If you're going to look back here, this is from Mom's very deep vintage Regia stash. You might be screaming at your monitor now, but I have been dyeing this vintage Regia sock wool, which so far I find to be the sturdiest wool for socks that I've used. I find I don't know what it is about this wool, but the heels, the socks, they seem solid. They don't look like they're going to disintegrate. Anyway, I don't have enough good words to say about the Regia sock yarn. So this is the wool that I used to create a purple heel. So I created a purple skein of wool and a variegated wool out of Regia white. So now that I've told you this top secret piece of information, I wanted to show you the other wool that I've been dyeing that's Regia. So far I've been doing the red and the white Regia over dyeing, and I'll show you what the colors are that I've gotten. So this one, this brown color here is actually, this is the before, which is red, and this is the after, and it's brown. And you're going to notice that the actual skein of wool is not even, I didn't even unwrap the skein. I just took the skein as is and popped it into my mason jar with the color, and I nuked it between, I think it was 3 cycles between reheat and popcorn, and this is the result. And so this is for the red wool, and I'll show you some of the other ones that I've been dyeing. Okay, here's one that I did from the white. So this is the before and the after, so you'll notice that I really like bright colors. And again, the skein as is into the mason jar, 3 cycles between reheat and popcorn, and I got this very wild fuchsia kind of red. And here's another one, and it's purple. I don't know if the color can be, but the color looks gorgeous. I'm not sure how it's going to knit up, but here's the before, and here's the purple that I was able to get from food dye in the microwave. And then, if that wasn't enough, I went really wild, and I decided I was going to do multicolors. Look at this. I have no idea what this is going to knit up like, but this is, again, here I did 2 they're not identical because I randomly spritzed it with colors. And so it went from white to these sort of parakeet colors. I don't know how to explain them. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to finding out what they're going to knit up like. And you're going to say, well, aren't you worried that the color is going to run? Well, these socks that were my first attempt with that wool is exactly the same colors that I've been using, the same food dye, etc. And none of the colors have even faded. The colors have been maintained their colors. In the back here, let's take a look on my board. What else do I have? Oh yes, here's another one. Again with the purple tips. And this sock was also, the white is the Regia wool. And the colored wool is actually a variegated wool that I had did some stranded knitting. Again, it's 2 at a time. And yeah, I do all my stranded knitting 2 at the same time. So each sock has 2 skeins of wool. So for example, this one is also sort of stranded knitting. And you're going to see the tips are the original red from Mom's Stash. And then I have the white, which is the original Regia from Mom's Stash. And then I had another variegated wool that I used for the stranded knitting pattern. And the knitting pattern is one of Stephanie van der Linden's pattern. It's not actually one of them, it's a whole bunch of them in one sock. So one of the socks from one of her books has this cuff that I tried out. And then I did the, what is this called? Whoops. It's the... it's not coming to me, the band that goes across, it's Latvian braid. Yeah, the Latvian braid I wanted to try out. And then the top, the instep, is another pattern from another one of her socks. And then the hearts was from another one of her socks on the back of the heel. Now the checkerboard, that was me. And this heel, what I did was, I did a combination heel as well, to give more room. I really like the way it fits. It is a short row heel and a gusset heel combined. And these socks fit so well. They really, really do. And what's nice about the short row heel is the way the short rows came together on the checkerboard. I thought that you can hardly even tell where the short rows are. In fact, I'm not sure if I can tell. I don't know if you can see this. In any case, it was a lot of fun. So 2 skeins at the same time, 2 socks at the same time, and yeah. What else? Now, if I look back on my sampling of socks, there were a lot of techniques that I learned. And the first book of sock knitting that I received or was introduced to was back in Berlin with Waltraud. And Uncle Klaus had purchased a sock knitting book by Stephanie van der Linden. And it was in German, and it came with a DVD. And now I just noticed that they have this book at the library, which I think, I'm not 100% sure, is supposed to be the translation of that original book with DVD. Now, as I'm reading through this book, first of all, for the price, when I went on to Amazon, it was ridiculously low, the price. I don't remember what it was, but there is so much information in this book that it is an essential reference guide. What I'd like to say is that the DVD that I used from the German book to learn how to knit socks sort of clarified things for me on how to do some of the stitches that are explained in this book. But as I'm reading through it, I think there's something lost in translation. So even though it's correct, whatever the way they wrote it, it's not all that clear on some of the explanations. But nevertheless, I think this is a book for your library. If you're going to buy something, this is one of the must-have books. And I'm just going to give you an example. Here's one of her cuff treatments, which is so cool. And she does this with a garter stitch. It just really looks kind of cool. And to give you another little taste, she has here 4 different heel types, which, whoops, can you see? 4 different heel types, which a lot of the other sock books, you don't have that. You have like 1 or 2, but 4 different ones. And the one pair of socks that sort of intrigued me when I was in Berlin was what she calls the basket weave socks. And now I can say, oh, these are the entrelac socks. And maybe I'll give them a try now that I've taken the entrelac class with Gwen Bortner. I'd like to show you how I do Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off using a crochet hook. Now I'm using a sample that I created from another demo just to show you. Here on the purple side, just to show you the effect of it, I've attached some white yarn so that you could see the effect of the Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. And essentially what it is in crochet, it is a half double crochet. So when you're doing a bind off of a knit stitch, which are all the stitches that I see here, you're doing a yarn over before you do the knit stitch. So I'm using a crochet hook to show you how that works. So basically the first stitch is done. Half double crochets a yarn over, go into the stitch and pull through, and that is the equivalent of doing it with a knitting needle. So let's do it one more time. So it's a yarn over, into the stitch, pull your yarn through, and come through for a bind off. Now I'll show you what that looks like using a knitting needle. So what you would do is a yarn over before you knit your stitch, and then you would have to bring the 2 stitches over. So this is how you would do it with a knitting needle. Again, a yarn over, knit your stitch, pull your stitch over, and that would be the bind off. Now I'll show you the same thing again with the crochet hook in the form of a half double crochet. So you've got your crochet hook, you're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and you're going to pull that loop through the 2 loops, and that's a half double crochet. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull your loop through the 2 loops. And to help you pull your loop through the 2 loops, what you can also do is yarn over, pull up a loop, take your knitting needle, and just create a little bit of space before you pull your loop through. And that is Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off using a crochet hook. Here's what it looks like, and on the back. You can't really tell the difference between my crochet hook and my knitting needle. Personally, I find when I use a crochet hook, that my loops are more uniform than when I use a knitting needle and I'm pulling the yarn over, which seems, in my opinion, to distort some of the stitches. Hope you enjoyed this demo. I'd like to demo how I use Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off to bind off my hubby's socks here, which I knitted 2 at the same time on one circular Chagu red lace interchangeable needle, actually the smallest size they have. I've already done most of one of the socks, and I'm just coming around to finishing off the first one. And I'm using a crochet hook. So what you need to know, or the way I understand the bind off, is depending on which stitch you're binding off, that is how you're going to do your yarn over. So I'm now presented with a purl stitch. So it's a regular yarn over, and I do a double yarn over, go into the purl stitch and pull through. Another purl stitch. This is a 3x3 rib that I'm doing, and pull through. Again. And pull through. Now I'm coming up to a knit stitch, and a knit stitch is a reverse yarn over. It's also a half double crochet. So basically you're doing a reverse yarn over, knit your stitch or pull up a loop, and then you're going to pull that loop through the 2 stitches to bind off. So again, reverse yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through your 2 stitches, and yarn off. Now I'm left with 1 stitch for this particular sock, which I'm going to finish off later. So I'm just going to pull that out. So the first sock is done. I'm going to show you a close-up of the stretchy bind off. I hope you can see it. And this one was done with the crochet hook. Can you see the way it looks? So this is Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off using a crochet hook. Thanks for watching.
I had a lot of fun with our toe-up knitting sock class by Donna Druchunas. I'd like to invite you back next time when I continue the class by Myra Wood, Crazy Lace Cardigan, and I begin double knitting with Alistair Post Quinn. As a reminder, everything that you heard on our episode today can be found referenced in our show notes, and our show notes have more than just today's episode information, so I'd like to encourage you to get a copy of those. You can find them on our website at quiltmoxy.com. In fact, I'm Quilt Moxy everywhere except for on Ravelry, and on Ravelry I am So Quilt Moxy, and So Quilt Moxy is SEWQUILTMOXIE. Thank you again. Bye for now. À la prochaine.